Good evening. Welcome to tonight's NUSD Board of Trustees meeting. We'd like to let you know that this meeting is being broadcast on the NUSD YouTube channel at the direction of the board. Some images and sounds from the audience can be captured there, FYI. If you'd like to make comment on anything on agenda or not on agenda, you can see the table at the side and they will give you the proper form. And we have two students helping us start the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you so much. The board did meet in closed session. Trustee Novato will report out.
Good evening. The board met in closed session on the following items: public employee discipline dismissal release, information only. Conference with Labor Joshua Braff, Chief Financial Officer, and Francesca Whitcomb, Executive Director, Human Resources and Employees Organization, Novato Federation of Teachers, NFT, information only. Conference with Labor Negotiators Joshua Braff, Chief Financial Officer, and Francesca Whitcomb, Executive Director, Human Resources and Employees Organization, California School Employee Association, CSEA, gave direction. Thank you.
Okay, we now will approve tonight's agenda. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve this agenda? Trustee Novato, thank you. And a second by Trustee Gasson, thank you. All those in favor? We have 6 plus our student trustees, none opposed. And next, our consent agenda. Are there any items that any trustee would like to pull from the consent agenda? I'm hearing none. Can I please have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Trustee Gasson, thank you. And a second by Trustee Mack, thank you. All in favor? 6 plus 2 student trustees, thank you so much. We will now go to announcements and we'll start with our student trustees.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Hope you guys have been having good afternoon, I guess. So over at San Marin, the elementary students from Luz, Sutton, Olive, and San Ramon have been visiting us to see our STEM program and visit with the leadership students. Other elementary schools have been visiting all this month. And San Marin students have been leading tours, doing science demonstrations, and fun presentations with them. On Friday, it is the opening night of Hadestown Teen Edition. It tells us a version of the ancient Greek myth of Orpheus and Eurydice. Our outstanding debaters head to the May State competition in Clover City and National Parliamentary Debate League's Tournament of Champions. Fiesta Ritmica has been rescheduled for Friday, April 4th due to bad weather, but we are excited to kick off spring break with it. This week includes a variety of sports events, both at home and away. We have the boys tennis will be playing against San Rafael and Terra Linda. Boys lacrosse team will be competing against Marymount, and girls varsity against TAM. The golf players play against Novato on Wednesday, and track and field will host a meet with TAM and Marin Catholic on Thursday. This week concludes with Friday home games for softball versus Cardinal Newman, baseball versus Novato, and swimming versus Marin Catholic.
Good evening, everyone. Trustees, Dr. Smith. I hope you all are doing well. First, I'd like to start off with a huge shout out to our staff and admin who have been working incredibly hard to prepare for our WASC visit next week. WASC, the Western Association of Schools and Colleges, are a group of educators who come to our school to ensure that we are meeting all the necessary standards and all the great, providing a great educational experience for our students. We've just finished our 80-page document that outlines our strengths, weaknesses, areas for improvement, and everything that we offer at Novato High School. WASC will be meeting with a random group of students, and we're hopeful that after the evaluation, we only need to see them again after 6 years. Now some fun events that have just been happening at school recently. The Hornet Bowl last Friday was such a blast. The seniors took home the win, like I said before. It was a super awesome, fun evening of school spirit and friendly competition. We also had a great time at the Lucky Run with lots of students participating and getting active in support of our safe and sober grad night. Our flocking fundraiser for the seniors is still going strong throughout the end of April, so if you'd like to send a flock of flamingos to a friend's yard for a small donation to our class, feel free to reach out to me or check out some of the flyers online. It's a fun way to spread some joy while supporting the class of 2025. Our Spirit Week this week, our Match Madness Spirit Week, has been a huge hit with some fantastic days. So yesterday was Green Day. Today we had Nike versus Adidas, and our juniors hosted a tie-dye fundraiser at lunch. Tomorrow is Battle of the Bay, so we're pulling up in all spirits, so like even athletics and Raiders, because a lot of people wanted to show that off. Thursday is tie-dye day with some of the stuff that people created during the tie-dye fundraiser. And then Friday is our rally day with class colors. And just a shout out to our Spirit and Rallies committee, who has been working super hard to make the rally packed with energy and excitement. So make sure to check it out online on Instagram for all the fun videos and highlights from our games and school spirits. Also, we have a few Dine and Donate events coming up. Tomorrow is The Habit. Chipotle is next Wednesday, the 26th, and then Crumble is next Thursday. So make sure to stop by and support our school. We're enjoying some great food. Parking information for the class of 2026 and 2027 will be coming out soon, so stay tuned for how the process works. For MSA News, this Saturday is the highly anticipated MSA Showcase, and we're so excited to see all the incredible talent from all the various disciplines. If you haven't already, you can still purchase a ticket up till Thursday. Don't miss out on this amazing event. It only happens once a year. We also have a couple of music concerts coming up next week. Next Wednesday is the vocal music concert, and next Thursday is the instrumental music concert. Now on to athletics. Our athlete of the week is Hunter Smith from baseball, who's been showing incredible dedication and performance on the field. Our game of the week is softball versus Petaluma this Thursday, so make sure to come out and support the team. And next Thursday, girls lacrosse has an exciting game with a whiteout theme from 4 at home. It's going to be an awesome game, so come out and show your support. That's all for today, and just a fun fact, not that anyone's counting, but we only have 10 more Mondays until the seniors from NUSD graduate. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm always both inspired and energized by your announcements, so thank you for all that you do and all that you bring to us. Very excited over the last few weeks to continue to cheer on the girls JV lacrosse team at San Marin, despite the weather, but traveling to a few away games and seeing them win again and again is incredibly heartening. Also was happy to participate my first time in the school transfer lottery, so that was an interesting exercise and really appreciated the staff coming together to support my education, and also just really seeing the names of the kiddos coming into NUSD and making those decisions is really, really exciting. So that's it. Thank you.
I was able to get to a couple of my committees that I serve on countywide. One of them was the JLAC group, the Golden Bell Committee I did today, and the Golden Bell Awards ceremony is on May 22nd. The other one was our E2 committee, which is efficiency and effectiveness. We got a presentation on e-bike safety, which is still at the forefront, making sure we're providing all the necessary what's the right e-bike for the right age and all of that. So they're still promoting all of that. That's still important. There's a public safety campaign that will be rolling out this spring, and all the districts will be getting all that information from the County Office of Education, so we can put that on our e-blast for each school. And one of the things is the goal is to have all Marin jurisdictions and counties adopt AB 1778. This is Assemblymember Conley who got it approved by the governor in the fall, and it goes into effect here January 1. It requires all Class 2 e-bike riders of all ages to wear a helmet and limit Class 2 e-bikes to 16 and older. So that will be looked at by each city. Yesterday, Congressman Huffman had an education forum here in Marin County, and it was a room full of educators and trustees across Marin County, so several of us attended that. We kind of talked a little bit, a couple of us talked about it a little bit, but it was a lot of information that we kind of already all know what's going on, so it wasn't anything really new to us, but it was good to have all of us in the room across the county as trustees and educators to realize that we're all on the same page and we're here to support each other with whatever is happening, because every day it's something different. And to keep the focus, and to focus on the students and keep serving all students. So the other things I did was within the district was modeling the way, a site visit at San Marin, and the North Marin Council PTA.
So I've had a lot of fun the last couple of weeks. I've been interacting with students and parents and staff, and I realized when I was looking at my calendar, as I do on Tuesdays, to see what fun things I can highlight. And I just realized I'm surrounded by a lot of really great people, and so I had a really good couple weeks. The first thing I had done was, after our last meeting, was go see San Jose's Little Mermaid, and it was absolutely adorable. I will admit to being somebody who puts up those little white lights all over the place, and so I'm partial to those, but then you added them into these umbrellas to make jellyfish, which is another favorite of mine. I go to the Monterey Bay Aquarium to see the jellyfish display. I was like, oh my gosh, this is just so amazing. What they did with the production was super cute. And then that Friday, I was inspired by the North Marin Council PTA leadership. There's a lot of great people in that group, and how they have so much support and care and thought in what they're doing for all of our schools, particularly doing these, as was just kind of mentioned about, everything. It seems like each day there's something different that we're looking at and trying to figure out how to navigate the current times as they are. Then on Saturday, I had so much fun at the MSA fashion show, and I just am amazed that we have these opportunities for our kids. It's a collaboration where the students actually design pieces, they sew them, then they have somebody come out and do the fashion show piece of it, and then they bring in different classes to do the lighting and the organization of the program and the photography. They just take all these different classes and they pull together this really amazing event that I was very proud of to see, and I'm looking forward to them continuing it on each year. So super exciting, and I think they also do that at San Marin as well. Then I also, I know I heard Hadestown was mentioned. So that opens, I think they're doing a show tonight. My daughter's actually in it. But I've also been participating and getting to be with the students and also the parents who are creating the design and costuming and everything. It's just a lot of work that's gone into that. So super exciting that it'll be opening tonight. I think they're doing it for middle schoolers, but it should start on, did you say Thursday?
It's Friday.
Friday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then again next weekend. And then JLAC, we got to visit Principal Boone at San Marin High. And then Friday night, I was at the Hornet Bowl and the Snack Shack, and I have to fess up to being a party to the accidental fire alarm set off. So unfortunately, we didn't know how much smoke the popcorn machine they have there actually puts out. So that was fun. And Saturday helped with the Check-in for Lucky Run fundraiser. And again, just want to say thank you. There's so many people that come together to make these things happen for our kids and help our schools in different ways. So thank you.
Nothing to report.
Good evening. I also had committee meetings. I want to give a shout out to Tanya for hosting such an amazing DLAC meeting last Thursday. And I always appreciate the feedback that we get from our parents. Dr. Seinard and I were able to exchange a few notes, so hopefully we can implement some of those in our school district. And then also did a school site visit, or actually I got invited to be a judge at Linwood. So it's always so nice to see our little kiddos and seeing what's happening in the classroom, and also got a chance to spend some time at San Marin with Dr. Smith and my other fellow board trustees. And I also attended our Congressman Huffman's event yesterday, and I love the fact, and I want to echo what Trustee Butler said, that we are all on the same page, and every day federal things are changing, we're reading the news, but at the end of the day, we're here for our students, which, makes me feel really happy that Marin is on the same page. Educators are on the same page. And I also attended JLAC. So very exciting time in the district. Spring is around the corner, so I'll be able to see more spring games. I'm a big fan of lacrosse, so I'll be looking out for the sports schedule. Thank you.
I went to Modeling the Way and some community meetings, and I also had the pleasure of meeting with a couple of the writers for San Marin's newspaper, the Pony Express, and got to kind of see how their process works, and it was really great. They have a really good organization, and they've recently redone their website, and so I don't know, it's great the way that they're fostering that work with other schools. So they partner and they work with other schools around the county to learn about that process. Thank you.
Let's see. So I just got back from Legislative Action Days with our administration organization from the state level. And so we were in Sacramento in the big building, lobbying as much as we could to fight for funding, full funding for education, and some other pieces of legislation that kind of rise to the top at this point. It is in our own district, it's Neurodiversity Week. So we're celebrating and raising awareness around neurodiversity. And so look for social media posts, et cetera, from our staff who embrace it fully. Let's see, open house season, as spring has sprung, as Magali was talking about. Open house season starts next week, Tuesday, I think, at Hamilton. And will proceed for many weeks to come. I want to congratulate Melanie Perez. She graduates from Marin Oaks on Friday. So I want to be there for her. They ring their bell when they graduate, kind of mid-year. That's at 1:45 on Friday. Dual language immersion meetings are tomorrow. We meet at 9 for families who prefer the morning, and then at 5:30 for families who prefer the evening. We have some great updates to offer. And then finally, like a shout out to our surplus property committee. Everybody who's been, a few of them are here today. Thank you for coming, and thank you for being part of that important process.
Okay, we have a presentation this evening from Pleasant Valley Elementary School. If you are here with that presentation, please join us.
Okay, good evening, Board of Trustees, Dr. Smith. Chandra, we haven't met, but I am Tony Kwan. It's nice to meet you. And student trustees. First off, thank you to San Marin for hosting Pleasant Valley for all the STEM days. I will try to be brief, but anyways, we're Pleasant Valley. And my name is Tony Kwan. I am the lucky principal there. And tonight I will be presenting about our Prop 28 program, which is funding from the state for continuous art and music in schools. And tonight I have my Readers Theater group with our incredible teacher, Mrs. Wolf, who will be leading a group of students who will perform for you tonight. But our performances and programs happen in grade level groups. They practice for about 6 weeks, and then they perform for their peers. And the reason why we chose to go with Readers Theater, one, I am a big fan of the live arts. I'm in performing arts, but there are a lot of benefits to the performing arts, including engagement, which builds creativity, motivation, a purpose for reading. Academics is a big piece of it, developing reading fluency, reading comprehension, vocab development, and a natural love of literature. And also the social emotional piece, which in my opinion is one of the core components of this, developing confidence, empathy, and collaboration amongst students. And for this, we actually use a variety of data to help drive who we select for groups. We try to have a variety of students who participate in the program, but there are different measures that we use to ensure that we're reaching as many students as possible. Some of the identifiers that we use include reading fluency and accuracy, students who need oral language development, students who just need an extra push with enrichment and extension, and students who need some support developing confidence in public speaking, which is one of our 6C skills. And this is just a little feedback from students who have participated in this program. A 4th grader said, "It has helped me with reading bigger words. It's helped me to read more smoothly." We had a 2nd grader who said, "It helped me learn new words, to not be shy and to be brave." And we had a kindergartner, "It helps me read because of the script. I figure out what the word is, and that helps when I look in a book. I know it is that word and I can read it." And that is from Henry McEachern. And then we have 4th grader, "It helped me with stage fright. I used to get a lot in Reader's Theater. I felt it was a safe environment for acting." And tonight we have live performers from Pleasant Valley. We have Arush, Noah, Leo, Ava, Finley, and Yofi, and their teacher as well, Mrs. Wolf. And they'll be doing a short performance for you all. Thank you.
but you're so small. We have never seen a mouse before. You're not very frightening at all. You're huge. I did not know that this is the way you look. You're very, very frightening. Eat elephants.
The cat and the mouse scampered into the woods. At last, the elephants had seen a mouse that was very small. They were never frightened of mice again. At last, the mouse had learned that elephants were very large. The mouse never again threatened to rip up an elephant's garden or tear down an elephant's house. Everyone lived happily ever after. The end.
We got Finley.
My name is Yoki, and I play the second half of narrator and James the Buck. And I play the narrator.
Nice job, guys. So proud of you. And thank you, Mrs. Wolf, for getting your... Oh, we're going to take a quick picture. Yeah, quick picture, yeah.
Okay, our next item is non-agenda public comment, and there are none. Our next item is a public hearing. I'm going to open the hearing for the public application to the State Board of Education regarding surplus property disposal procedures. Seeing that there are no comments, I will now close. Okay, we are now on to discussion action item 13A, the approval of the 24-25 second interim budget, brought to us by Joshua Braff.
All right, good evening, trustees. We're going to start in on the second interim budget report. And this is the report is as of sorry, something in my throat. This report is as of January 31st, and it is due to the county office on March 15th. We did hit that deadline. As you may notice, today is March 18th. They do allow for the board to accept this report after that deadline, as long as we have turned in the supporting documents to the county office, which we did last week before they were uploaded to the board packet, so before March 15th. The board is going to be asked to vote to accept this report as presented. There are three possible ways to present this report. That can be positive, qualified, or negative. And this is a positive certification. Positive certification means that we expect that we can hit our, we can hit the requirement to have a 3% reserve in not only the current year, but also in the following 2 years. So that would be all the way through 24, 25, 25, 26, and 26, 27. Second interim is a snapshot of the QSS system. So that's also an important thing to kind of keep in mind, that while we do include a multi-year projection, the main point of it is it's looking at this year. And in this year, that's a snapshot. So it's a snapshot in time of January 31st. But it does take into account some February and early March adjustments that we were able to do, right? Certain things had happened, certain contracts went through, so we basically tucked them in and backdated them to January 31st to make sure it would be as accurate as possible. This is the last reporting period before the year-end close. The next time that we will be up here, we'll be presenting a budget, but that will be for next year. So this is the last 24-25 report until the year closes. So the revenues and expenditures, they're projected for 3 years, as we talked about in the MYP. That's this year and the next 2 years, and that is part of the SACS report. The local control funding formula, and these are the assumptions that go into that MYP, so that's what I'm talking about on this page. The local control funding formula, or the LCFF, has a COLA, or cost of living augmentation or adjustment, that is projected to be 2.43% for next year. That was as of the governor's budget in January. So of course, this being January 31st, we already have that information in here. We won't have the May information for obvious reasons, where things get pretty much locked in until the legislature votes on that in June. So at first interim, that was projected to be 2.93%. So it has been a reduction. So that's been a hard hit for us, right? 0.5% is pretty significant. That's about $500,000 ongoing. And then the out years, though, what was nice is that the out years were increased slightly. So over a long period of time, it does make up for it. But it does mean a hit for the upcoming 2 years. Our average daily attendance and enrollment are both down from when we budgeted. However, they are up over last year. So we are still growing in enrollment. We are still growing in ADA. However, they are down from what we budgeted. We budgeted a growth of about 50 or so kids, and we've seen a growth of about 20 kids. So that is, again, a hit to our LCFF dollars from budget. I'm going to talk in budget terms. This is a good thing. In life, this is not a good thing. Our unduplicated count is currently at 49%. Historically, we've been at 33%. Why I say that is a good thing budget-wise is that this isn't new students that showed up all of a sudden. I want to definitely thank our classified staff at our sites, who, especially our office managers and community liaisons, who led a very strong charge to get every single family to fill out the alternative income forms. What that did is it allowed to capture the truth of how many unduplicated families we had out there. And unduplicated is people of low social economic status, kids that are on food stamps, kids that are foster youth or English learners. But the part that we didn't, so the English learners, they're in our English learner classes. We have those numbers. Our foster youth or our homeless youth, we have those numbers through other programs. People on food stamps, we have those numbers through SNAP benefits. What we don't have is self-reported. That's the part where if a family doesn't fill out that form, we don't know about them. That's where the difference in this number came from, is people self-reporting, hey, I'm in a lower economic bracket. That is a big change in our LCAP dollars. So those things that I talked about in bullet point 1 and bullet point 2 were completely offset by the fact that we were able to capture those families. So it's obviously a bad thing for the world for us to have a lot of unduplicated students, but if we are going to have them in Novato, we need to capture them in these numbers so that we get the funding to be able to offer those services back to those students and families. The state and federal numbers will remain flat. Yes, there are a lot of questions on what that means for federal funds, but as of right now, there hasn't been anything that we can write down. So we're holding them flat going forward. Utilization of the restricted funds, we're trying to supplant any sort of eligible one-time expenses that we can. In other words, offset unrestricted costs. That was the same at first interim. Nothing has changed there. We are being cautious about things like the TK add-on and the one-time money because of the big unknowns. LA wildfires being one, the deferred taxes due to the LA wildfires being one. We don't know what that's going to mean in the upcoming year because so much I mean, LA County is about 30% of all tax revenues. So that being deferred, that's a big number. It's never been tested before to see what a single county of that size can do when they're deferred alone. So we'll see. The 24-25 second interim does show a decrease in ADA from the budget. This is the actual number of what we saw is about 46 from the budget. And then second interim showed a decrease of about 60 students. And so we're still projecting small increases in the out years, especially next year. We're seeing our TK numbers up really high, but throughout the entire system, it's still a small increase. MYP includes step and column adjustments, but no ongoing salary increases as negotiations are still ongoing. And our MYP, as I said before, it includes a 3.52% COLA in 25-26. We use the School Services of California dartboard for those numbers. And we continue the inclusion of new curriculum. Those are some additional costs that are put in here. And then any sort of local grants, we don't project those because we don't know if they're one time, if they're ongoing, but we do project things like parcel tax, which is in the local grant and local funding category. So moving into that MYP that we're talking about, it does maintain that 3% required fiscal reserve through 26-27. The deficit spending does reduce over time. And then on the left side, I have our EFB, the ending fund balance. So when I talk about that we need a 3% reserve, the ending fund balance is that reserve. That's what we're talking about. We spend down the restricted money. Restricted does not count to that 3%. So even though it does have its own ending fund balance, the 3% is unrestricted. So in other words, think our tax money, LCFF dollars, property taxes, things like that. So as we get into it, what are the next steps and sort of the conclusions that we have from this report? At second interim, the main focus was just, it's been the focus for the last 2 years, is ensuring our accuracy within our budgeting practices and trying to make sure that we have a clear through line from budget to first interim to second interim to close, so that we know if things changed, why they changed, and were they changed responsibly. We want to ensure that we're staffing at our contractual levels. That was a discussion that we had at our last meeting, was discussing those types of moves for out years. Understanding the plans for the one-time money, both the ones that are expiring and the upcoming ones coming up, what we're going to do with that. We can't take on a bunch of ongoing costs with one-time money. And then continuing to figure out long-term plans. We don't want to be reacting. We want to be planning. And we are predicting an unrestricted ending fund balance of $11 million, or 12.24% of the combined expenses. That includes Fund 17 in it. And then a combined ending fund balance of $17.7 million. So the deficit, it has to be addressed, right? That we have in our MYP cuts that were proposed, and we want to make those cuts soon so that we don't have to make even larger ones later. And we want to continue the conversation about new sources of revenue. That moves us away from this idea of what do we need to cut and into the idea of how much money do we need to raise to keep the services that we have now, which is, I think, a much more positive discussion. So what's next? We have the May revision that will be released in May from the governor. And we'll continue our negotiations with our labor partners. And then we have the development of the 25-26 budget, which will come back to you in June for approval. Any questions? And I ask for approval of the second interim.
Comment on a couple of questions. First, thank you for the last bullet there, the reframe and the orientation to revenue rather than what are we going to cut. I really appreciate that. I don't know if you know this, but I'm going to ask just in case you might. When you're talking about the unrestricted ending balance of $11 million, which is 12.24% of the combined expenses, on other years, is it comparable in terms of unrestricted, or is that a shift in the overall percentage allocation?
So it's been a shift down.
Okay.
Will say that we have board policy that at one time was a dollar amount, and that equaled out to a percentage. So the percentage is going to sound weird, but we do have board's policy that says our unrestricted ending fund balance will be equal to about 6.61%. So at a time that equaled a dollar, like we'll say $15 million. So now it doesn't exactly equal that, but we do have board policy that says that we will maintain at 16.61. So the goal is to get back there. So at 12.24, we're already out of alignment with our board policy.
It's really helpful, thank you. The other question, just so that I understand it, is regarding the COLA. The local control funding formula COLA, you say projected to be 2.43. First interim, it was 2.93. Okay, it's down. But then for the, I can't find it now, for the multi-year, I think you talk about, oh, here it is, the 3.52%. Can you just quickly tell me the difference between the local control funding formula COLA and the multi-year?
I think that's a typo there. So that should actually be 3.52 is in the 26-27 school year.
Okay, that's,
Because, yeah, the 2.43 would be for next year. For this year was 1.08.
yeah.
So
okay.
we already know this year. Next year's 2.43. Sorry, that should say 26-27, which would be the last year of the 3 years, which
That
is
makes,
why I brought it
that
up.
makes sense, thank
So
you.
yeah, that's 3.52.
So it sort of was already addressing my questions or my thoughts. I was thinking that for some reason this presentation made me more nervous than I've been in a couple of years. And I think just because I saw our ending fund balance through the next couple of years really dropping significantly. And I understand a lot of that, the one-time money and all that on the restricted side. And so when I was thinking about this, and also just the uncertainty, we're always getting questions about federal funding, if it's still going to be here, we have that component. And then as was kind of referenced here, we don't really have control over our income per se. We don't generate revenue unless we do something. So there's that boundary on us. And then, we want to do all these amazing programs I spoke to earlier. I mean, we have such great things going on at our schools that we want to keep, and it's always painful when we're here and we're having to make cuts because it's not anything that any of us want to do. And then, we've got the minimum, which I've always spoken to, of 3% is not that much, right? So that's, we absolutely can't go below that. And I thought it was 17%, but whatever that number is that we had as a board determined that we were targeting for that percentage to be, if it's 16 point whatever, then that's what it is. I realized going into tonight that we've kind of gotten away from, maybe we need to reset or refocus, because what I don't want to do is get to that 3%, and then it's like we just have to, there's nothing we can do. And I know your team has been really mindful in trying to get us gradually to be focused on making sure we don't get that low. But if as a board, the next time when we're speaking about our budget and everything, figuring out what is that real number, we like 17 or the 16 point whatever, but what's that real number that we really don't want to go below? And I think that might help us when we have to make decisions, because again, none of us want to make those cuts. But if it's 5% or 6% or something that's, just not 3, maybe we can have those conversations as we're seeing our restricted money going away. That kind of at least made us feel better. We had stuff there, and we're starting to not have a whole lot of wiggle room. So it was just a thought that I had that maybe we can broach when we start looking at the next year's budget.
Yeah, and I was talking with an unnamed representative of CSEA, not one of our local chapters, but one of their regional, and they agree that like a 10% is a fair discussion point of a ending fund balance. And then that changes depending on the size of your district and how many dollars does 10% actually equal. But really, I think everyone's in agreement that 3% is not appropriate. That's too close. That it's even scarier when you think of the giant districts like a San Francisco and Los Angeles are only required 1%. So it seems like even more ridiculous. But Yeah, 3% is not enough.
Going on that topic, and it's good to see former trustees Nell and Millerick here. No, we had extensive conversations on this, and if I recall correctly, the board policy, I can't remember if it's 2 months or 3 months of salary that we decided that we had to maintain as a minimum, and that was our target. So that's the 16% or whatever it is. If you could kind of clarify that when you have time, I can't remember if it was the 2 months or 3 months, but it was something like that of our operating expense, which is basically salaries. Because if we were to hit some sort of a big, a rough patch, we need to keep the lights on for at least 2 months. That's the key. 3% obviously is ridiculously low. We wouldn't be able to last more than 5 days. So, but this is, for catastrophic things, and that's what the reserve is for. So, anyway. But if you could clarify that when you have time, that'd be great. Because I think we all need to revisit that and understand it and know why we did it, and instead of trying to undo it. So, staying with the original policy. Done with that speech. The unduplicated count on page 3, and that's amazing. I want to thank your staff, everybody who did that. I had no idea we could drive the number up by just being more thorough, if you will, or reaching out. And so that's wonderful. My question is, does that push us up into any of the kickers for the LCAP yet? Not yet. Okay, are 55%. We close? 55, okay.
One of the discussions...
And it's district-wide, right?
Say it again?
It's district-wide.
Yeah, and that was actually what I was going to talk about. Yeah. I think one of the current discussions, the two big discussions going on right now is instead of using ADA, use enrollment. And I will say that because our ADA is higher than the state average, using enrollment will actually hurt NUSD. So we want to use ADA for as long as we're above that number.
Because we're such good citizens.
You know what? People like coming to our schools.
Yeah.
The unduplicated count is 55% for concentration dollars. And the other big discussion other than that ADA versus enrollment is concentration district-wide versus site-based, the way that title funding is done. So if that were to change, we would have a couple of sites, a handful of sites that would be eligible for that. For we do have some that are over 55%. And the final thing I'll talk about on that one, the unduplicated count, the dollars that we receive is based on a 3-year average. So now that this shot up this year, that's great, but it is taking the 2 years lower. So as we go forward, it's bringing and generating in additional revenue for us in our LCAP, because it does up our supplemental dollars, it ups our lottery funds, and it ups our like ELOP programming. So it does have a real impact. That is all in the MYP though right now. So it is the issues that we have. It's not like just a magic wand or anything.
Right. Well, let me just reiterate. Thank you. Mm-hmm. I mean, that is fantastic. That's a huge jump. So thank you for making that effort. Much appreciated.
That was definitely worth it. Yes. Yeah, and Leslie too. Leslie did an amazing job on that too.
Other comments or questions or a motion to approve? Trustee Alexander has a first. Trustee Butler with a second. Thank you. All those in favor? 6 plus our 2 student trustees. Thank you. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you all very much.
Our next item is 13B. This is the approval of resolution number 21, 2024-2025, declaring property as exempt surplus land and authorizing staff to submit a waiver of application to the State Board of Education regarding surplus property disposal procedures. This is brought to us by Derek Nell.
Okay, good evening, board. Nice to see you all again. It's housing night tonight, maybe a little bit. We have 2 items on the agenda to go over with you. Just tag along on the budget California Department of Finance released its numbers for last month, and it's approximately 26% above governor's original projection and up about 4% over the year, so a little good news. not going to solve all our problems. Okay, so tonight, basically, I want to bring to you the final recommendation and report on the Surplus Property Facilities Advisory Committee. That's the committee often referred to as the 7-Eleven committee that handles the process of declaring properties surplus. So just want to let everybody know that we have members of the committee here. We've got Jeff Schenkel, Rick Van Ellsberg, Dale Klein, and I'm going to bring up our chairperson, Ross Millerick, and chairperson, Susan Wernick, in just a few minutes. In fact, you guys, if you want to start wandering up. I also want to, thank the committee and let the committee know that thanks to to Ellen and our superintendent, we have some gifts for you guys. So hopefully you will recall to take your plants, your succulents home with you tonight. And we just wanted to express our gratitude for the amount of time that the committee spent on this particular project. Also tonight with us is James Traber with the F3 Law. If you later on when we have any questions when we're discussing the passage of the resolution, if you have questions about the waiver process or the rationale behind the waiver process, Jim is also here available. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to our chairman, Ross Millerick.
Thank you. Good evening. We're going to make 3 topics. One is to talk about process. One is to talk about recommendations. The second about recommendations. And the third, and Suzanne will cover the third, the particular items that the committee had concerns about and interest, and so that'll be a particularly focused topic. So the meetings, the committee met in 3 meetings at January 1st, January 15th, February 5th, and February 26th. At the January 15th meeting, the district handed to us a topic of conversation, which was the Meadow Park property and the San Andreas property. So we did not look beyond those 2. That was the committee's charge. So we considered those 2 under the question of, is this surplus property for academic purposes? So we were boxed in that time. At the February 5th meeting, the committee, more additional data was presented. You have a copy of a report in your board packet that goes in more detail than the slide deck. I suggest you read it. It's pretty thorough and, well, in my opinion, well written. I wasn't the author, just to be clear. And out of that came a recommendation from the committee, and as Mr. Nell has pointed out, the committee members are civic members of Novato long-term standing who have been looking at the health of this community, not from what am I going to do about my budget this year, but what's the right thing to be doing for this community decade over decade. And that's what the committee was made of, and it was diverse in makeup. And the committee came back at the 3rd meeting and developed recommendations. And I'm going to take a look at the recommendations, not the slide deck. And well, before I do that, there's one more slide to go to, which is the picture of the 2 properties. Yep. The San Andreas parcel, which is over by Harvest Market. Is it Harvest? Now it's Harvest Market. It changes names periodically. And then the Community Action Marin Hamilton Annex property. And as you know, that's interesting to us in a lot of different ways. The Novato School District, beginning before my service under Jim Barrett and Jeff McAlpin, leased that property at a reduced rate to Community Action Marin, and that First 5 program has been serving Novato successfully 4 decades, a long time. And so there's got to be some thought about, you guys have to think about how that's going to affect this issue. I think it's not my problem, it's your problem. So, but those are the 2 we considered, and I'm going to pick up the recommendation page from the report and hit the highlights of that. Historical analysis and projected enrollment of the district. The committee says we don't have growing enrollment. My personal experience is after 3 decades, we have pretty static enrollment. Novato is not has more kids today than, has less kids today than it had over the last 30 years. So and I don't see anything, and neither did any of the committee members, that there's changes in our community that's going to generate a huge shock to the point that you would have to build a new school. We looked at existing sites, and there's space to add portables or account for, 100 new homes or some 100 new homes with a charge of students coming in and then moving through the school and graduating. It looked like to us that the school has the capacity to meet that need more economically on existing sites as opposed to these two sites. So we thought about that. We looked at the cost of actually building additional school sites. If anybody's tried to do any construction recently, the cost of construction is a different circumstance. And after the LA fires, the demand for building materials in California is going to be challenged. And if we can't get lumber out of Canada, I'm not sure exactly how that's going to work. So we'll see how that works. So the committee looked at it carefully and there were some of the recommendations that we've listed, which is basically these two properties are surplus, which is our recommendation to you. And there were additional considerations that we had thought about at the committee. My members are here, but the assistant chair is going to, or associate chair is going to present those to you so you can focus on those. Any questions for me before I step aside? Suzanne.
Good evening. It's a little odd to be on this end of the process, but I'm delighted to be here. So tonight I'm just going to touch on some additional recommendations that the committee had come up with. So Derek had presented to us, basically the plan and then reached out. Is there anything additional that you would like the board to consider? So these were the three that the committee collectively came up with. The first one is the board which we ask of you. We ask the board to continue to work with the community and people in those areas surrounding the sites, so those people are aware of the potential developments on the properties. If you notice, both sites are infill, so they're surrounded by existing development. And my own personal experience, I was a 5.5-year planning commissioner for the city of Novato and a 5-year city council member. And so I have what I would consider some extensive background in this. When you have a project like that, it really doesn't, people care. And the committee was very cognizant of that you work with the community so they know what's going on. So that's from my own personal experience, that's an incredible piece of advice. Number two, which really builds on this, is include a robust community outreach. Committee members are encouraged to participate in reaching out to the community. So your committee members would like to be involved in the process. I think a lot of us are well connected in the community. That's why we were asked to serve in this capacity. And so everyone is interested in helping. And that outreach, from my own personal experience, the more outreach you do, the more successful this is. At this point, it's really just declaring the property surplus, but if you move forward to do something with the properties, Novato is very well connected. I know this personally, and they will know, and everybody will have all kinds of crazy misinformation. So getting out ahead of that is absolutely critical, and it can be done. Number three, the last one, we went a little bit back and forth with this because of, anyway, I'll say it. We'd like the board to consider the pros and cons of entitling the properties before the potential sale or lease of them. Entitling is not permitting, just so you all know. Entitling is getting a project actually approved on the site. We did this, the perfect example is the Old Fireman's Fund site. There's a fully entitled project on that. But as you can see, it's not moving forward. They didn't necessarily, and I could be speaking out of turn on this, have builders ready. So my own personal response to this is, that's a great idea to do it, because then the community knows exactly, yeah, I'm getting this. I know what's coming in. But if you don't have a builder who's going to do it, we have so many projects that we've entitled. I can't tell you how many projects I was involved in entitling and they never got built. So, but that's why the committee is suggesting that you have that conversation and learn about that. Would it be beneficial to entitle either property before or not? So the more information you have, it's just more solid the outcome is going to be. And then I did make a few notes myself, and before I relinquish my position here, I want to make sure that for my own personal position, I wanted to add that for me personally, the San Andreas site was the beginning of my civic journey 15 years ago. So that was the site that was identified for upzoning. I think it was the 2009 to 2013 housing element. And they were going to, city had an idea of upzoning, I think it was 3 to 5 acres on that 21-acre parcel. And it just blew up. And they were looking at sites all over town. It was insane. Debbie remembers. So the city manager at the time, Michael Frank, said, stop. And he was brilliant because he brought together a working group. There were about 24 of us. And he brought people from housing advocates to real estate agents, and community members together. And we worked with city staff to identify and vet sites that we eventually presented to the city council to be included in that housing element. That was the first time that the state was requiring in a housing element that you not only identify sites for higher density housing, but to actually rezone them. And now that is a process in every housing element. So now I've been through 3 housing element processes and the complete overhaul of the general plan. So I have a fairly good understanding of where the city wants to go in terms of housing. And if that is if that is the course of action that this board continues on, I think what our committee was saying is that outreach is really, really critical. So I guess that's enough for me. Does anyone have any questions? No, said it all.
I'll just take it back to say it is time for questions for the board, for our chair people or myself. Essentially, what we're recommending tonight is that you go ahead and pass a resolution to declare the properties as surplus and to let us use a waiver process, which will allow us to bypass a convoluted bidding process and will give us a lot more control as to what we're going to do with this property through our RFP process. And I have Jim here if you have questions on the waiver and the rationale behind that as well. So it's questions time for the committee, myself, or legal.
We have one public comment as well, so we'll hear from Trustee Mack.
Okay. Could you go back to the slide with the overhead photos? Just an informational question. The way that the whole Hamilton property is parceled out currently, does it line up with the way we want to break it out, or do we have to kind of rejig? I see 2 lines. I see a red line and I see a white line. I'm just wondering, is it currently lined up with where we want to do our stuff?
Right. As a result of the feasibility study, the parcel that has most of the portables for Community Action Marin Head Start program is a smaller parcel, but there's quite a bit of the school, Hamilton K-8 school parcel. So we basically would increase the smaller parcel up to almost 4 acres by combining them and moving the development within those 2 parcels up closer to the K-8 school. So it is a little hard to see on this one, but it's actually, I would describe it as the white line, not the red line, but the white line at the very top.
Right. So the process, we would have to work with the county to kind of redraw those 2 lots, I guess.
Not the county, no.
Yeah.
It just, well, actually, you're right. If we were going to do that, that's something that we actually haven't decided exactly how we would do it yet, but it's likely we would just do a property line adjustment, which is fairly simple, I'm told.
That's all I want to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Especially if you own both properties.
Okay, we have public comment from Jeff Schenkel, please.
I'm on a 2-month sabbatical from preaching, so I had to take 3 minutes here of your time. But no, again, thank you for the work you do. Just the little bit of time we spend on this committee gives us an appreciation of what you do, and I just wanted to take time to encourage you again on this process that it is an onerous process, and there are a lot of details that you're working through that we were a part of. And again, don't let perfect be the enemy of what's good. Like, there's such a tendency to feel like you have to dot every I and cross T's. That's what you have a lawyer for. That's what you have Derek for, and they're doing a fantastic job with that. I wanted to tell one personal story because it happened to me today. I went on a field trip with some students to Sacramento, and there was a teacher there that's, I'll just say, younger than I am. And all I'm thinking about is, how do we keep this teacher here? And because of my work, I hear from teachers and other people in education who just don't know how long they're going to last here. Teachers who are older than I am, who don't know how long they're going to last. As Josh said, you have a deficit problem, you need new sources of revenue. Like, this is a creative solution to some of those things. And as you're doing that community output, know that there are some people who are going to try to make a perfect standard for you, but most of us don't expect you to be perfect. We know that you're good. That's why we elected you. We know that you're good, and so we look forward to hearing from you in the community. Be a part of the community. We're going to get there. Get us there sooner than later. I'm tired personally of hearing this place called Slovato all the time. Maybe you can turn us into Govato, and so let's go.
Thank you. Trustee Gasson and then Trustee Butler.
I was just going to say thank you. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, sorry. I just want to acknowledge and share appreciation for all the time that you spent, and thank you for what you said as well. I know the layers of things that are involved in all of this, and so the time that you spent to get us to where we are today is just greatly appreciated, so thank you.
Agree with those comments. I don't need to say much more, but this is a big step for us. This is one of those hurdles that we never got to. So thank you to the committee for committing your time and making the decision that you did. And I'm ready to support this. So let's keep moving forward.
So I did want to say that Heather Bettini, I was also on the committee, that she's also here. Maybe everybody on the committee could guys put your hands up so the board can see you guys. And we did get a few that couldn't make it tonight, but a lot of appreciation for our members and the work that they did.
Okay. Yes, additional thank you to all of our committee members for all of your time. This is a roll call vote, but I do need a first and a second. Trustee Mack with a first, Trustee Novato with a second. Trustee Alexander.
Aye.
Trustee Butler.
Aye.
Trustee Gasson.
Aye.
Trustee Jacobson, aye. Trustee Novato.
Aye.
Trustee Mack.
Aye.
Trustee Pickus is absent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, committee. Appreciate you being here. And I'll just stay here for the next item, because I'm going to introduce some guests.
This is item 13C. This is the approval of Resolution 2024-2025, authorizing and directing staff to pursue participation in the Oak Hill Apartments project, brought to us by Derek Nell. Sorry.
Okay, just to, I'm going to set this up. We have Ken Lippy, Assistant Superintendent of Marin County Office of Education, and Matthew Heimel, who is the current Executive Director of the Marin County Public Finance Authority, that's the MCPFA, who's responsible for the Oak Hill Apartments development. And they're here to present and ask for the board to pass a resolution tonight directing staff to work on a final agreement, which would be an agreement and an MOU. I'll let them tell you about it, that they would come back at a later date. And ready to turn it over to you guys.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me here. I'm with Ken Lippy, as Derek said, as well as our financial advisors. So if there are any other questions, they could handle those as well. For those of you who don't know me, for the past 18 years, I was the county administrator, and before that, I was the assistant controller for the city and county of San Francisco and the budget director. So I have a a budget and a finance background. I retired from the county last March, and my goal was to do part-time public service on meaningful projects, so this certainly fits that criteria. And I will say on a personal note, my wife is a teacher and my daughter's a high school teacher, so I can certainly relate to the challenging, the ability for young teachers to find housing in high-cost areas in the Bay Area. So I think some of this is familiar to you at the beginning, but I'm just going to make sure we're all on the same page as an overview and then talk about this guarantor project. So the JPA that I'm the executive director of was created by both MCOE and the county in 2023. Its sole purpose is to finance and build the Oak Hill housing project. Our mission is to provide affordable rental housing on a cost-covered basis for public school and county employees. We have a 5-member board. 2 members are appointed by MCOE and 3 are appointed by the county. So I think you're familiar with this. The public schools have done surveying about the employees, and there's a strong demand for subsidized affordable housing. More than 1,400 county educators said that they would be interested in it. And this is really the business case for Oak Hill. The high cost of living and the turnover. And this is really a recruitment and retention issue. And having worked for the county, what we found is that we were able to recruit, social workers, probation officers, but oftentimes they lived in Solano, Sonoma County, or the East Bay, and within a couple of years they were giving us their resignation because they got a job closer to home. And so this is an ability to, I think really it's a strengthen the retention piece of that equation, which I think is our biggest challenge, frankly. And many of our employees would qualify for this low and moderate income housing. So the project is on 8 acres that is state land that they would be leasing the land to the JPA for $1 for 99 years, as long as we continue to use it in the purpose as prescribed here. There are actually 2 projects on the land, 115 units of family housing, and then our project, which is 135 units, 25% for the county and 75% for educators, and we have shared infrastructure and parking for an economies of scale on the building. This is just a conceptual view. This is going to be high quality new housing. Each unit will have washer and dryers. It's very comparable to the private market rate housing, except it doesn't have a pool. That's probably one of the main differences. So I've been the executive director since October, and by far our biggest challenge has been the budget of doing this project. And you, I'm sure, have maybe are aware that there's a budget gap. And talking about why there's a budget gap, by far the biggest reason for the budget gap is that interest rates have changed substantially since this project was envisioned. 5 years ago, interest rates were in the 2 to 3% range. They've more than doubled. If they had only doubled, we'd have a balanced budget, but because they've more than doubled, we have a shortfall. The other reason we have a shortfall is we're continuing to keep the assumption and the goal of providing affordable housing in the 50 to 80% AMI rate, average medium income. And so that means we get less rental revenue, and therefore we have a bigger gap. So if we increase the rental rates, we would have a smaller gap, but we wouldn't be achieving our mission. And we are trying to learn from lessons learned from other projects. And when you drill down on some of the projects that haven't been successful, what you find is often they're charging near market rates. And that's one of the reasons that the units aren't as attractive to employees. So we're doing several strategies to try to close that gap. First, we're continuing to seek grant funding. We have already received $15.7 million in grant funding, $10 million from the state, $5 million from the county, and $700,000 from Marin Community Foundation. But we're continuing to seek additional funding. We are currently talking to Marin Community Foundation about shorter term, lower interest rate borrowing for some portion of our debt that would say, reduce the gap. As I mentioned, we could change the rental rate assumptions, but we're really reluctant to do that at this point. But by far the biggest strategy to close this gap is the affordable housing guarantor financing program. And so that's what I'm going to talk about for the next few slides. The other thing I want to mention is there also have been discussions about why are we going forward when we have an unbalanced budget. And just like any public entity, we wouldn't go forward unless we had a balanced budget. And the definition of balanced budget means not relying on ongoing revenue from the school districts to make that budget balanced. So the program, as it's envisioned, is basically the idea of proportionally guaranteeing, having like 5 different agencies proportionally guarantee the debt. And so if you're occupying, the county is occupying 25% of the units, they would be guaranteeing 25% of basically the rental income that supports the debt service. And what that allows us to do is get about a 1% lower interest rate, which means for the same amount of revenue, we could raise $10 million more in bond proceeds. And that equates to $400 a unit reduction in rent. And so that's why it's so, compelling. So how would it work? First, the school district would decide how many units they would want to. We have 9 units that are representative of the development, and I'll have a slide that will go over that detail. But basically, you would size what the number of units you want dedicated, and then that would be, you would be taking on that proportional guarantee role. We've been talking to school districts for the last 3 months about this program, and one of the things we heard loud and clear is the school districts don't want to be a landlord. And so this would not require school districts to be a landlord. The JPA would really handle the responsibility of setting the rates and doing an RFP for a property management firm who would be fully responsible for the intaking and the landlord duties that are required. The program benefits, as I mentioned, by far the biggest benefit is reducing the interest rates and therefore helping to close the budget gap. It also provides dedicated units to the school districts. And so that's something that you can count on long term and use as a recruitment and retention tool for your district. And as I mentioned, you can size the number of units based on what you would be interested in. The school involvement, the biggest school involvement would be to help us refer employees to the JPA so we can develop a waiting list so that we have an excess demand and mitigate our risk. If there are multiple employees that would be eligible for the same slot, we would use a lottery system to help determine that. And, again, we're not counting on it, but if we ever had to, the role would be to backstop rental revenues if they fell short. And the JPA would then work to come up with a balanced budget so that's not an ongoing occurrence that the school district would have to deal with. And should the circumstances change, if you could mutually agree on having another school district take on that commitment, almost like a sublet agreement could take place. So we've been working with the budget officers on risk mitigation strategies, and they've been really helpful. One of the things that's not on this slide, but I mentioned earlier, is that if we can achieve 50 to 80% AMI, that would be our best risk mitigation strategy because we know we would then have a high demand for that housing. That would be 30% below market rate housing in Marin, and so that would really help to mitigate the risk of not having vacancies. But the bigger thing also is having a number of different agencies which we would develop waiting lists for. So not only would it be the 5 agencies that are participating in the guarantor program, but MCOE is serving as the group participation for all the other school districts. So all those employees would be able to participate in the housing and be on the waiting list as well. And the school district would not be responsible for normal vacancy rates. In the County of Marin, vacancy rates in the market setting is about 3 to 4%. We're using a 4% assumption. So, so the school district would not be responsible for that. In addition, we're setting up with project funds a vacancy reserve that it would be about 1.7 million, and that would be used initially to fund any shortfalls. And then by the next fiscal year, we would be asking the school districts to make us whole on replenishing that reserve account. And one of the things that the budget officers brought up, which I think is a great idea, is if the school is not sending us folks to fill the units and we have other waiting list folks, we could fill those units, and that could be used to mitigate any financial exposure that the school would have. And then ultimately, at the end of the day, legally, we could offer this to employees of other public agencies. So we could go to cities and towns or childcare districts, childcare providers. We're not really advertising that because we don't think we'll be in that situation, but for a guarantor, it's good to know that you can always fill those units with other folks, and so that it's not an ongoing issue. So this is the 9-unit block. As part of the $15 million grant that we received, it requires us to provide a certain number of units at 50% AMI, certain number of units at 60% AMI, and a certain number of units of 80% AMI, which we're happy to do given that's kind of the mission of the organization. There are about 49 units that can be between 80 and 120% AMI, and that's really helpful to have that flexibility as we go forward to fill the units. And so this is the 9-unit block. That's a mixture of the income levels and the 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms. Most of our units are 1 bedroom. And so if, I think on your resolution, you had 27 units, it was basically times 3 to each of those subsets there. So as I mentioned at the beginning, this is a 2-step process. The first step process is what we're asking for tonight, which is saying, does the agency conceptually agree on joining the program and having a number of dedicated units? And then if so, we would then work to develop a balanced budget around that assumption. We would continue to work with your staff, your legal team on any remaining questions. We would work to establish a balanced budget and let you know if we can reach a balanced budget or if we can't reach a balanced budget. And then only when we achieve a balanced budget would we come back to you with the final legal agreement that you would be able to review prior to taking action. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions you may have.
Just remind the board, I'm here if there's questions about what we're doing, and Josh is here as well if you guys have questions.
Thank you. And really helped me understand it. I have a lot more clarity. But of course, a couple clarifying questions. Vacancy reserve, how is that going to be formed? Where's it going to come from? Is that part of the existing funds? That's part of the shortfall, fund the shortfall, and the vacancy reserve is funded?
Yeah, it's going to come from the project funding. So right now it is part of the shortfall.
Okay.
But it was something that, we clearly heard from schools that it would be difficult to ask you for dollars up front to fund that reserve. And so therefore we made a decision to fund that from project funds.
Okay, got it. So it's really just part of the shortfall that we're funding.
That's right.
Okay. And then I noticed that you're talking about the tenants and calling them sublessors. Would I be correct to really say that by being guarantors, we're effectively the lessors, and then we're subletting our assigned groups of 9 units out to our tenants as sublessors?
Yeah, we started with a traditional master lease arrangement, and what we heard from the schools, because they didn't want to be in that landlord role, that we needed to differentiate it, and so that's how we differentiated into the granting role. So, you know, if you had another district, they would be agreeing to, in return for having those dedicated units, taking on the obligation of the guarantor role, which is around the backing up 96% of the revenue assumed from your dedicated units.
Okay. Yeah, I get it. I just want to make sure I understood it correctly. Okay. And then just the genesis of going with 9 units. I mean, how did that kind of come about?
Yeah, I mean, that was based on what's the smallest number of units we could establish that would be a representative sample of all the mix of our units and the income mix of our units.
Okay.
And so that was how we established that, because we heard from schools that, you know, they would want us to put it into kind of sizable chunks that they could then decide on whether to scale up or scale down.
And that makes sense, and that helps. Speaking of which, let's say that, you know, so 27 is our number. Mm-hmm. And we're fine with 27, but they're all young and they only want 1 bedrooms. Can we adjust our mix to get rid of our 3s and get more 1s, as an example? Or how would we do it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we would probably have some language that would speak to that you have 27 units and there would be some level of flexibility as long as there was a mutual agreement with another guarantor agency. You know, we would have that kind of an arrangement that if it was okay to swap units among 2 agencies and you're still filling within the 27, we could do that.
I just anticipate that us hitting a nail on the head with that distribution is going to be a fairly difficult task. It'd be more, I wouldn't be surprised if we are more toward the 1s, just by virtue of where they're located in Southern Marin. Anyway.
Yeah, and the project, I think, is 60% 1 bedroom, so it's largely 1 bedrooms. Yeah.
Got it.
So you mentioned the fluctuating interest rates is part of the dilemma. How is the change in the supply or construction materials and all that being accounted for?
Yeah. That's when I say I can't guarantee we're going to balance the budget. There are some things that we don't control. We don't control the interest rates. We don't control construction costs. What I will say with construction costs is we did an RFQ in January, and we got 10 bids back, of which most of them were within our budget parameters that we were anticipating. We are now in the process of narrowing it down to the top 3 that we would then ask for an RFP, which would be a specific bid that would be potentially binding once we enter into a legal agreement with them. We're doing what's called a risk manager at risk, and the idea with that is that they would deliver the project to 100% of the specs that we provide, and it's meant to reduce change orders and cost overruns, and saying like they're legally binding to create the housing that we specified. And so we're doing that as a risk mitigation as well, as part of the construction process. If we were like the county, who had a bigger, had funds available in reserves that could deal with change orders, that would be one thing. But because we're not that entity, we are using that risk manager at risk model. So we should know more about where the construction costs end up sometime in May.
More question. This is really more for Derek, actually, I think. Both of you, whatever. And it's rhetorical. Really, I want to just ask the question that we are not approving the expenditure of any funds tonight. We are just really approving staff to take a look at this and get back to us with a detailed proposal, at which point then we'll decide whether we're going to commit.
That's correct. The resolution is to ask us to pursue an agreement in the MOU on the project, and they will, obviously there'll be some back and forth probably as we go along. We've already submitted a list of questions and concerns. We've had some conversations already to date. And that's so that we're just basically getting official direction for you to help the process move along. And I have.
Thank you for asking that. That was my thing too, because I'm looking at the resolution. It says staff to pursue, and then we're looking at the two-step process, and I almost saw a difference there. So I just wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue is, we need to know whether we get 100% participation in the grantor model, and that's why, we're looking for that notion of how many units are you interested in, and it's more of like a good faith effort, and then we understand we need to prove to you that, it's a balanced budget that you feel comfortable going forward with.
Do you need a multitude of districts to sign on to this?
It's a handful of districts. Right now, we're talking to San Rafael. We're talking to the College of Marin. MCOE is serving as an umbrella organization, and then the county and yourself. And that would be, the number of districts we would need.
Okay. The other question, how does this hurt us financially? Does this hurt us any way financially? We're, our fiduciary responsibility here. The one thing I just think of is just simply as our bond rating. What would that, if we go out for a bond, how does that affect us in any way with this overhanging?
I certainly would defer to Josh if he wants to speak more specifically, but what we've talked about, this is what would be considered a contingent liability. And so part of it is, what is the risk of that? The way I looked at it was around, I think that, the biggest challenge will be at the beginning, filling the units. We've done a study that shows that there's a demand for over 200 each year from all the different agency employees. Mm-hmm. So I think over time it will be easy to fill turnover. So our real challenge is filling them up, when we first go live. I did a sensitivity analysis around the annual maximum guarantee is around $1 million. If the vacancy rate is at 4%, then you don't owe anything. If it were at 8%, you would owe $40,000. But again, that would not be something we would want to be an ongoing circumstance. So if it were to 12%, it would be about $80,000. So that's the kind of exposure that you would most likely look at. If you look at like a 95% confidence interval around vacancies, that's the kind of range you might look at as far as exposure. That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there's just a couple of things that Derek and I have talked about, like at length, in our housing conversations. And so, yes, that was exactly the point that Matt hit on, which was what is the actual expected amount that we would put away as an ending fund balance item to say what is our potential liability, and we would be putting in there somewhere between that $40,000 and $80,000. That is if units stay vacant for the entire year, right? Because that's a yearly amount, not a monthly amount or anything like that. And then, I think that this lines up very closely with the question that we're asking about our own housing, right? If we're asking about our own housing and we're saying we're going to put in 100 units or 200 units, and we think we can fill them, I think that we can ask it in the opposite direction. If we don't think we can fill 27 units, what are we doing trying to fill 200 units, right? So I think that the risk is that the reality risk is probably very, very low. When it comes to the bond funding, that will show up as a $1 million a year potential liability. And that would be something that we would explain through the narrative. That question, though, you then look at what is our bond liability for the county right now, and it's upwards of $50 million, and that's with our Measure G, Measure A bonds, right? So it's not something that's going to move that needle too far.
We have a public comment right now. I'm going to go to that. Romario.
Apologies for the glasses. My eyes were
Yeah, it's on.
I also speak pretty loudly.
I know, but they can't hear on TV.
Oh, got it, got it.
You gotta restart your time.
Thank you. Good evening, trustees. My name is Romario Conrado. I use he, him, his pronouns. Linwood, class of 2008, San Jose, class of 2012, and Novato High, class of 2016. And I'm currently serving as the advocacy manager for Community Action Marin. And Community Action Marin is in strong support of the Oak Hill Teacher and Workforce Housing Project and the important leadership role that NUSD can and should play to make this project a success. At CAM, we advocate for housing stability because we know it's central for well-being and thriving, and that high housing costs are pushing essential workers, teachers, first responders, and service providers out of Marin. And all of this is making me think of my former Spanish teacher, Mr. Solis from Novato High. Every day from Sebastopol, arriving at school by 5 a.m. just to avoid traffic. No matter what, though, he was always warm, energetic, and deeply committed to his students, celebrating diversity and making everyone feel seen. Teachers like him are the backbone of our community, yet they often struggle to live anywhere near the schools they serve. This financing plan for the Oak Hill project is a smart, collaborative solution to help address Marin's workforce housing needs. It includes risk mitigation for schools and NUSD's partnering agencies. Notably, the Marin County Public Financing Authority has implemented several safeguards to prevent revenue shortfalls, including pre-leasing waitlists, budgeting reserves for normal vacancies, establishing an MC PFA funded reserve for higher than expected vacancies, and finally allowing districts to fill units with tenants from other public agencies. The Oak Hill project is good for Marin and it is good for the Novato community. We urge your participation and support for this project. Thank you so much.
I think we have two other public comments, and maybe we'll take them at the podium just so we have batteries. Lovely. We have Lolly Dilworth will be next. Oh, sorry, Lucy. Yep, I see that. And then Mimi will be after. And we'll just need a second to get the batteries in. Okay, we'll switch to this microphone if you don't mind. You-
Good evening, everybody. My name's Lucy Dilworth. I'm a resident of San Anselmo, but I'm also a member of the board of the Coalition of Sensible Taxpayers. And we'd like to really just ask some questions or make some points. Not on the benefits and importance of affordable housing in this county or in Novato. Everybody recognizes that it's an excellent idea. However, the participation of the school districts is the risky element. Developers take this risk. Normally, school districts do not. We feel that, well, speaking as, for many years as counsel for underwriters, no deal goes forward in any way without a complete disclosure of contingent liability. And as far as I can tell, although it's being built as we speak and is dependent upon how many participants there are in the guarantor project, you still have no certainty as to how much you're obligating yourselves to as a contingency. It just seems incredibly unwise to move forward without having a hard number to work off. The second point that I'd like to make is that it's to do with, and I don't know how this has been worked out, but it's to do with vacancies and tenants' rights. It seems to me, and I don't know how clearly this has been worked out, that if you have non-payment of rent, you have a full unit, but a tenant that's not paying, and you have to go through a full eviction process, whether or not that's included in the costs that are covered by you or the reserves, or how that's allocated. And the third item, which I can't find, no, I think I'll just stop right there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next we have Mimi.
Hi, I'm Mimi Willard. I'm president of the Coalition of Sensible Taxpayers, and our view is that it's really unacceptable to ask schools to backstop a housing development. And what you're being asked to today is to take the first giant step down a slippery slope, because you will be one of only 4 school districts that are opting in. Others have opted out. You should ask them why. And very possibly the deal collapses or has to be restructured if you decide, when you actually see the numbers in May or June, that you don't want in. So I think you should take today's decision very seriously, and I would suggest you might want to postpone before you pass the resolution today, and do some due diligence, including reaching out to the other districts that decided not to participate. The due diligence requirements that you're ultimately going to need when you see the final sets of numbers are probably, if you really wanted to do a good job and make sure you didn't expose the district inappropriately, you'd want to hire your own people to take a look at this, independent of the JPA. You should have a market analysis for your employees versus their options. Does someone who's living in Petaluma think it's attractive financially, et cetera, to be at Oak Hill, where it might be just the same price in Petaluma and they would have a backyard perhaps? You should have some independent evaluation of the pro forma analysis that they'll ultimately provide for you in May. What are the assumptions? And then you want to compare them with January 2025, when there was the 17.4 million shortfall, to see what assumptions did they change, and do you think that those are credible? We have asked repeatedly, as have others, for the January 2025 pro forma. We cannot get them. We have now submitted a PRA, and we'll see if that produces them. You're going to want an accountant and auditor of your own to look at this whole issue of contingent liability that extends for 40 years. And how is that going to impact your reserves? Will you end up falling through the 3% threshold at some point? To what extent does it impair your ability to pay teachers in the future? I was on Wall Street for 20 years, and I can tell you that when the bond market is anxious and they want a school district to guarantee it, and they think that that's worth a percentage point, there's some substantial risk that they have priced into it. So I think you need to do your homework, and I hope that you will proceed cautiously for the protection of your district and the teachers who work here and the kids that you educate. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That concludes our public comments for this item. Do we have other comments? Okay, Trustee Gasson, yes.
Not so much a question, but so process. So this is the resolution to go further to see a full draft of terms, and then the board would vote on that. And then, well, actually, I should add a step. We do this, they can see if the shortfall is covered through other schools or however they calculate that. And then the agreement comes back with the full terms or the full agreement vetted out, and then we vote on that, yes or no. Correct? That's the process. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to ask for a motion for this item. It is a roll call vote. Trustee Mack, thank you. And a second by Trustee Alexander. Trustee Alexander.
Aye.
Trustee Butler.
Aye.
Trustee Gasson.
Aye.
Trustee Jacobson is aye. Trustee Lametta.
Aye.
Trustee Mack.
Aye.
Trustee Pickus is absent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is 13D. This is the approval of new website vendor for the Novato Unified School District and schools, Aries and Smart Site, brought to us by Leslie Benjamin, Director of Communications and Community Engagement.
Oh, where is that? There we go. Thank you, trustees and Superintendent Smith. I'm very excited to be here tonight to share with you the potential new website vendor that we have been exploring for the past 5 or 6 months. And I want to acknowledge Oz Becker's here, our web designer, who was part of this process all along. So a little background. In 2017, we migrated all of our sites from, oh, what page is this? Yeah? Here we go. Right page. We migrated all of our sites to WordPress, which is an open source custom design platform. Before that, we had, if any of you remember, we had Sharp School, who was an education-based proprietary platform with standard templates, so we had that. And then in last year, we received a complaint was filed with the Office for Civil Rights about our website accessibility, and which led to a resolution agreement with the Office for Civil Rights. I just want to point out that the complaint was not a local complaint. It was someplace else. They told us that, which made, I think, us feel much better that it wasn't somebody local. Anyway, so since 2017, website platforms have improved significantly in their usability, accessibility, and design. And so last fall, we initiated a thorough evaluation of our new website vendors to ensure compliance and improve user experience. So the process started in October, where we formed an evaluation website committee of staff, parents, and guardian and members. In November, we had focus groups that were conducted, and about 50 people participated, and we had principals, office managers, community liaisons, and PTA representatives, our parents and guardians. And then in December, we launched a survey on our website asking a multitude of questions, and it was distributed to staff, parents and guardians, and our high school students, and we got nearly 500 responses. Then in January and February of this year, we evaluated 4 vendors, and then we selected 2. In February, we took those 2 and had finalists. And then we, out of those 2, we selected Smart Sites. So the key findings from our feedback from the focus groups and the surveys were about website editing and content management. We really heard from the principals and office managers the need for more control over the updates, and they also wanted to reduce the duplication by syncing the information across platforms. Another point was about accurate and current information. They really wanted to have up-to-date, easy-to-find details, accurate directories, for department information. Navigation and search issues was also another topic that was brought up. They really felt the menu structures were difficult and the search functionality was poor. There was a desire for better mobile apps and language translation features, and of course, accessibility. So why Smart Sites? Well, Smart Sites is part of Parent Square, so it would be a seamless integration. They're also, our websites in migrating would become WCAG compliant. So our accessibility issues would be decreased tremendously. It would also sync announcements, calendars, and alerts across the platforms. And it would provide, instant communication in a well-organized website where people can find information. It would have enhanced website editing and management. There's a user-friendly interface for non-technical staff, as well as centralized updates to prevent inconsistencies. And here at the district level, we'd be able to push out the same update to all sites. Standardization and consistency,
We'd have unified layouts, accurate directories, consolidated calendars. It syncs with Aries so that the directories are automatically updated. One other thing that's really interesting is that it would be able to edit the website on our mobile device, which would be really handy if we're not here and something happens in an emergency, we'd be able to push out an alert and then push it onto our websites as well. And then also better search and navigation. It would have improved search tools and would streamline the menus. We would choose and develop a template that we would migrate the pages to, and we'd be able to streamline the menus and work out the higher, more visited web pages we can put higher up so people can get to them easier. Let's see, and then, so looking in the future and implementation, mobile optimization and user experience, it would be a fully responsive across devices. It'd be cleaner, less overwhelming interface. Smart Sites integrates with Aries for up-to-date staff and information. It supports structured content review workflows, stability and accessibility, multilingual capabilities. We'd have embedded forms, and again, the ADA compliance. And then we would also ensure that security and emergency communication readiness. And like I said, with Parent Square, we'd be able to push things out like that really easily. And then I asked our Smart Sites representative to kind of do a mock home page for us. Oh, it's not there. Let me see. Do that. So I wanted to show it to you. So it's on here, but it's not there. I'm gonna look at you. I don't know. Well, unfortunately, I know. Let's see. The picture on the last slide is a representation of. It is a picture, and so unfortunately, if you scroll down, it's much cleaner and looks much nicer. Well, I'm bummed out about that. Okay. Stall. Go like this? Okay. So, yeah, well, I've talked to a couple people couple districts that have Smart Sites already, San Rafael and Windsor. And on San Rafael, they said the transition was seamless and very, very good. And up in Windsor, and both of them have had the Smart Sites for a couple years. And one of the things that Oz and I found out when we went to the Parent Square Summit in December down in San Rafael, down in San Jose, is that Parent Square is very they really listen to you, like for additions or improvements. Well, it's right there. And so, in talking with San Rafael and, oh, thank you, and talking with San Rafael and Windsor, they've said it
is a new school year.
No, I do not want to play it. Thank you. I just want to. Right. So where did it go? I don't see it here, David.
It's on the other tab.
Right. I'm not seeing the. Yeah, but I.
Scroll to the top. You're in the middle of the page.
See what I mean? Well, anyway, I can forward you the link to that.
David, would you try the other tab and then scroll up once?
Yeah.
I had asked about the, going like internationally, they have like if you want to go to Paris and it's in French or whatever, they have a thing at the top. You just say, English. And you mentioned in your response that we have like a Google.
We have Google Translates on the top of all of ours.
So does it, how does that work? Does it just translate the whole page, or I mean, is it the same idea? I just
Yeah,
never used it.
Yeah,
And I didn't.
it translates the whole page.
Okay, so they can just, you go up and it's the same idea. They can click on something in whatever language. Okay, awesome.
Many languages. So, thank you, David. So here's a mock-up of the page. You know, this isn't necessarily what we're going to choose, but gives you an idea of what it would be. Just something a little simpler, a little cleaner. We would have like the latest news. This is where the Parent Square feed would be, like when we send out newsletters, announcements. For school sites, they would have their updates here. You could have us at a glance, what we have now. We could talk about our curriculum and everything like that. Upcoming events. We could put our social media feed right there. And that's it. That's just the homepage. It's just a little mock-up.
Thank you. It looks like a great mock-up. Really appreciate it. So I just want to clarify some, I guess, assumptions that I'm making. The first is because WordPress was open source, this is an incremental cost, right? It sounds like there are some incredible efficiencies to be gained, as well as it looks great in this. And so I guess my question is just for you and the allocation of your time, are you anticipating that this will enable you to be free to do other kinds of outreach, promotion, engagement? What are you thinking in terms of your vision for how you can use
I think it will streamline our communication processes between Parent Square and between the Parent Square and the website, because it'll be all integrated. And I think that'll be a big help not only for me but also for our school sites. They want to have more involvement in what is on their websites, and what some of the challenges I hear right now is what they have on Parent Square, then they have to transfer it and then put it over to their website, and that's just been kind of clunky. And really seeing this as a much smoother transition and much easier for everyone.
Thank you.
I've actually been in the past very critical about our current website. So just seeing the mock, it seems already cleaner and nicer. I was able to attend one of your meetings, and I just really like what they presented. It seemed like we would have a lot of support from the vendor. And actually there wasn't a lot of like differences, but I think this one stood out for the...
Yeah. In the vendors that we talked to, I mean, one of them we put aside right away, but the other three were very comparable, and it just really came down to what were we most comfortable with, what would work with us. There was a number of staff people on the evaluation committee, and they really liked Smart Sites, I think because it did integrate well with Parent Square, and we already have the API with Aries, so they just thought it'd much be a smoother transition.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Leslie, this is like when we're translating, it's not using the Google translator. It's right?
Well, that's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up.
Because that's the reason why I was excited about the vendor that I attended.
Yeah, so I had subsequent conversations with the vendor about this, and to go to Weglot, that's another outside translation service. It would be like another $3,500, and you'd be limited to 10 languages. And so we talked about this, and he says, well, have you had complaints about your translations? And I said, well, not that I know of. So he said, well, why don't we leave it out for now? And if all of a sudden we start getting we get complaints, we can go to Weglot.
It's not that it's translation. I've heard it out in the Google just doesn't translate the same way.
Okay,
that's just a given.
Right. But I guess once we hear about if the website is translated.
Yeah.
Well.
So I think I would hope that we would reconsider.
Oh, we can totally reconsider
because it's not the same.
Okay.
It drives me crazy that when people use Google Translator, because you lose some words, and some of the words are not in it's not the same grammar. So I would hope that we would consider and do that.
We can add that. That's an easy add. We haven't done anything yet. This is just like the first step in getting the contract going. But if there's a desire to go to that, we can certainly do that.
Yeah, it would be great if we consider that. But that's just I'm one of 7.
I was already loving this because I've been fighting the whole website thing since I've been a mom in kindergarten. But I think one thing that you said that struck me, and I just want to reiterate for those who maybe don't use it or whatever, the thing that drives me the most nuts is that you would find information in one place and you'd find something else someplace else and you didn't know which one was right. So for you to say that you can put something in Parent Square and that can then get uploaded, I mean, it just makes me feel like, okay, if I go to one of those places, I know that that's what the information is and that that's what I can rely on. And I think for it, again, as a mom and somebody who's been, I finally just would give up because I didn't know which part was accurate. I'd be calling my friend Lisa Swanson and going, can you tell me please? Because I don't know which one this is. So that component alone just, I mean, for me, elevates the whole thing even higher because of that just single component. So I just wanted to share that for those that don't have to.
Well, we
do
are
that.
striving for consistency.
Yeah, I mean, it's just nice. If it feeds into the other thing and it's all seamless, then that's great.
And just to the incremental cost thing, I think we have to go back to the original point, which is that we need to be ADA compliant, and we're not, and that costs money. So, but on top of everything else we've already talked about, that's the number one thing. So, but in terms of the language and using Google Translate, can we track how often it's used, and then we can get a sense for how much we need it?
I was just looking at Oz, and she says no.
Okay, I was kind of worried about
Unable
that.
to.
Okay.
I don't think we can track that. But you know what? I can ask Smart Sites if they can track that. I mean, I don't know.
Just to get a sense for, I mean, if no one's ever using it anyway, but yeah, anyway, I know. I need to be careful there. Yeah, that's true.
I mean, the DLAG was part of the conversation. So sorry, the 3,500, is that a one-time or is it like
Annual.
every year? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's an annual fee. Alice, I'm sorry, did you want to say something?
I was going to say you can't track who actually uses the translating option, but you can track who's Spanish users. But also getting into that kind of detail it goes into privacy rights. So there's particular information we would never have privy access to.
Yeah, not so much the who, just how many.
Right.
How often.
Again, that is tracking user behavior, clicking and where. So that's a privacy thing. But we can just detect Spanish users.
Just first of all, thank you so much for doing this. I think for high schoolers especially, it's so much easier to look at the websites. But I had two clarifying questions. So Aries is a partner to Smart Sites, and then so whatever's on like Parent Square will just be like hyperlinked onto the potential new website?
So it's more, I think the other way around is like Aries is the bigger company and they adopted Parent Square as their communications platform. And then Parent Square then found another website vendor that they took under their wing, and now it's Smart Sites. And so that just sort of feeds in, they feed into for Aries. That's why it says it's in like an Aries contract, because it's still under the Aries umbrella.
Okay, awesome. And then on the school sites, who will be or who do you see being the person with like access to editing, and how easy is it for multiple people to access a website to edit like the website and provide like updates?
Well, one of the great things about the Smart Sites and many of the vendors that we spoke to, you can really give permissions to people and have them like do one page or do like a section, so you can really get granular on your permissions. So maybe the principal or the office manager will do the calendar and the events, and maybe somebody, say a high school English department will or the counseling department will ensure that your academic planning guide is up there, and different things like that.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What about the chat bot?
That's what's always on.
Is that going to stay on there?
Yeah,
I gathered up all my website information, and one of them was this.
Yeah,
I forgot
that will stay on there. We get a lot
of
of traffic on that, actually. I think we just met with him last week, and I think we get between 200 and 300 people have questions on that a month.
So that'll still stay intact.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll have less questions with a better website.
Well, yes. Well, or else people will find things more easily, or it'll track it.
Okay, if we have no other questions, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve this item. We've got Trustee Gasson and a second by Trustee Lametta. All in favor? 6 plus our student trustees. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have item 13E. This is the approval of new certificated job description first reading, brought to us by Francesca Whitcomb, Director of Human Resources.
Good evening, trustees, Dr. Smith, student trustees. So this first item here is approval. It's the first readings for 2 new certificated job descriptions. The first being the new job description for the teacher placed in our new vocational transition, special education transition program class for our 18 to 22-year-olds. And I created this job description in collaboration with Dawn Mawhinney, our Director of Special Education. And I appreciate and want to shout out for her help with that. And then the second job description there is for our dual language immersion teacher. And I worked in collaboration with Dr. Smith as well as Principal Lauren Men-Chavez. And just a little bit of trivia, we actually used like a skeleton, if you will, of the dual language immersion teacher job description from San Rafael City Schools that Lauren actually was the one who wrote when she was in San Rafael. So we just made new and improved things to it. So thought you'd enjoy that little bit of trivia. And that is it. Both of these, the dual language immersion program obviously has been in place at Linwood, but there has not been a specific job description since it was created, and we figured it was about time, long overdue. Yeah. Any questions about either of those?
Trustee Gasson?
Just an observation. I like how you've been cleaning these up and having the date, and then there used to be like people's names, and they look so nice. So thank you, and I'm good if everybody else is to make a motion to approve.
Great, we have a motion by Trustee Gasson. Just to note, this does come back as a second reading on consent. We need a second for this by Trustee Lametta. Thank you. All in favor? 6 plus our 2 student trustees. Thank you so much. And now we have item 13F. This is the review and approval of board policy and administrative regulation, the 400, which is the personnel series, first reading, also by Francesca Whitcomb.
All right, so these are new board policies to our district. And I'm sure that you potentially have noted they're technically optional policies in CSBA. And a big part of that is any board policy in this realm is typically subject to agreements you have with your collective bargaining units, so with CSEA and NFT. So I think in previous years, these policies may not have been brought forward because the assumption is we have collective bargaining agreements that we have to navigate through anyway, as well as education code and other law that applies to the leaves that our employees are entitled to. But in making a review of these updates, I just felt like it was important that we have things called out and just know that anything that we're navigating in these board policies is going to be subject to collective bargaining. So if the agreements with NFT or CSEA provide for other things or additional things, then those stand. Those are over this.
Questions, comments, or a motion? This is also a first reading, so we'll see this again on consent. Trustee Alexander with a first, thank you, and a second by Trustee Mack. Wonderful, all in favor? 6 plus our student trustees, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we will see you all here again on April 1st for our next regularly scheduled meeting.